Rain lashed the diner's windows, each drop a drumbeat in the storm's fury. Inside, a lone waitress slid a steaming plate of food to a shivering veteran, her hand steady despite her boss's venomous glare. One act of defiance. One moment of compassion. It cost her everything: job, home, hope. But the next morning, as dawn broke, 200 soldiers in crisp uniforms stood silent outside that same diner. Not for coffee. Not for breakfast. For her. This is a tale of hidden courage, crushing injustice, and a justice so stunning it'll grip your soul. Ever wonder what happens when one quiet stand shakes an entire nation? If you believe in unsung heroes, hit that like button now, subscribe to HeroHush Stories, drop a comment with your own story of kindness, and share this with someone who needs a spark of inspiration. Let's step into the storm that changed it all. Brookdale, Kentucky, was a town time had abandoned, its pulse stolen by a factory closure 12 years prior. Rusted smokestacks jutted into the gray sky like broken promises, casting long shadows over cracked sidewalks where dandelions pushed through with defiant green. Storefronts sagged, their paint peeling in slow surrender, the air heavy with the scent of damp asphalt and motor oil from a nearby junkyard. Streetlights flickered weakly, some burned out, leaving pools of darkness that seemed to swallow hope itself. At the heart of this decay stood the Oakwood Diner, its neon, open, sign buzzing faintly, a stubborn flicker of life in a town that felt half dead. The diner's faded red booths and chipped formica counters held stories of truckers, drifters, and locals who came for cheap coffee and a moment's warmth. Mia Thompson, 32, was the diner's quiet sentinel, a woman who moved through life like a shadow, unnoticed but ever present. Her apron, a patchwork of coffee stains, grease splatters, and ketchup smudges, hung loosely over a faded blue flannel shirt, her uniform for the endless grind of double shifts. She arrived before dawn, her sneakers crunching gravel as she unlocked the diner's creaky door, flipping on the grill as the first gray light seeped through smudged windows. She stayed past midnight, scrubbing counters worn smooth by years of tired elbows, the hum of the fluorescent lights her only company. Her ponytail, always pulled tight, kept the weight of the day from dragging her shoulders down. To Brookdale, Mia was invisible, a smile that poured coffee, a hand that cleared plates, a voice that said evening and meant it. But Mia saw everything: the regular who stirred his coffee too long, his eyes hollow with unspoken grief, the new dishwasher who flinched when the cook shouted, the wanderers who slipped in, heads low, asking for water to mask their hunger. Her life was forged in the crucible of loss. When Mia was 7, her parents vanished into a haze of addiction and bad choices, leaving her with her grandfather, Harlan Thompson, a Korean War veteran with a bent spine, calloused hands, and eyes that held both fire and sorrow. Harlan raised her in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, its walls vibrating with the hum of dryers, the air thick with detergent and pipe smoke. Over his cherrywood pipe, he spun tales of frostbitten nights in Chosin, of comrades who shared their last rations, of battles won not with guns but with grit. "Honor ain't a parade, Mia," he'd say, his voice gravelly as the gravel lot outside. "It's mending a fence in the dark, helping a stranger when no one's clapping, especially then." He taught her to stand firm, to notice the overlooked, to carry burdens without complaint. When he died 4 years ago, Mia stood dry-eyed at his graveside, clutching his dog tags, their cold metal a tether to his lessons. She buried her grief in the diner, turning it into a subtle sanctuary for Brookdale's forgotten souls, her grandfather's bronze star and purple heart tucked in a shoebox under her bed beside a faded photo of him in uniform, his smile fierce and unbroken. Life pressed harder now. 3 months ago, her roommate bailed without warning, leaving Mia with a stack of overdue bills, electric, gas, rent, and a landlord whose daily calls were sharp as a debt collector's knife. Her savings had dwindled to $62.47, scraped from tips of loose change and crumpled dollar bills, barely enough for Whisker's cat food and her bus fare to work. She'd moved to a rented room above a garage, its walls stained with oil, its ceiling leaking during storms, leaving puddles on the warped linoleum. The single outlet sparked if she plugged in more than a lamp, and the bathroom faucet screeched like a wounded animal, its drip a constant reminder of her precarious hold. Whiskers, her one-eyed tabby, a street survivor with a scarred face and a raspy purr, adapted without complaint, curling up in a drawer lined with an old dish towel, his warmth a small anchor in Mia's unraveling world. Each night, under the flicker of a faulty fluorescent bulb, she whispered to him, "We'll make it through," echoing Harlan's mantra, "Stand firm, even when you feel small." But exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was soul-deep, a bone-weary ache from swallowing daily slights. The cook barked orders through clouds of sizzling grease, his voice cutting like a blade. Customers spilled coffee on her shoes, then tipped in pennies or not at all. The manager, Hank Grayson, docked her pay for a broken glass, muttering, "Be grateful you've got a job at all." Mia didn't complain, she couldn't afford to. She noticed the lonely, the broken, the ones who came in asking for water and left with their eyes on the floor, their shame heavier than their hunger. Late at night, alone with Whiskers, she'd hold Harlan's dog tags, their edges worn smooth, and murmur, "We're okay." But the truth lingered like a shadow, she was tired of pretending, tired of watching a world that turned its back on the weary. Could one choice break that cycle, or break her entirely? It was a Tuesday, rain pounding the Oakwood diner like a relentless drum, each drop rattling the loose panes of its smudged windows. The storm outside roared, sending rivulets of water down the glass, blurring the neon "open" sign into a flickering red smear. Inside, the diner hummed with its familiar rhythm, the clink of forks against chipped plates, the low murmur of conversations, the hiss of the grill spitting grease. The air was thick with the scent of fried onions, burnt toast, and brewing coffee, a comforting haze that clung to Mia's apron as she wiped down the counter, her hands moving on autopilot across a stubborn ketchup stain. The clock above the pass-through window read 7:14 p.m., and the diner was half empty, just a scattering of regulars nursing coffee and a trucker hunched over a soggy newspaper. The door creaked open, admitting a gust of cold wind that sent napkins fluttering off a table. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the storm, water dripping from a ragged military coat, its faded green weighed down by the downpour. His beard was gray and patchy, matted with rain, his left leg dragged slightly, wrapped in layers of gauze that looked days old, stained and fraying at the edges. His hands, scarred and trembling, clutched a sodden paper bag, its corners softened by the wet, as if it held his last shred of hope. His eyes, sunken but sharp, scanned the room, not for a seat, but for permission to exist in the warmth. Customers glanced up, then away, their faces a mix of pity, discomfort, and practiced indifference. A couple in the corner stirred their coffee with exaggerated focus, a lone regular adjusted his glasses, burying himself in his phone. Mia's breath caught in her chest. In the man's weary posture, she saw Harlan, the same quiet pride masking unspoken pain, the same weight of battles fought long ago, their scars etched deeper than skin. He shuffled to a corner booth, hesitant, as if expecting a shout to leave. Mia approached, her sneakers squeaking on the wet linoleum, a damp towel still in hand from her endless wiping. "Evening," she said softly, her voice steady despite the flicker of recognition in her gut. "Something warm for you?" He didn't meet her eyes at first, his gaze locked on the floor, his shoulders hunched as if braced for rejection. When he finally looked up, his eyes held a war of pride and pain, each fighting for space. "Just hot water, ma'am," he murmured, voice barely audible over the rain's roar. "Maybe a crust of bread, if it's headed for the trash." The words hit Mia like a memory. Harlan had once told her of a stranger in 1953 who fed him on a rainy night in Busan, asking for nothing but a moment's dignity. She nodded, turning to the kitchen. Under the heat lamp sat a returned order, chicken stew, thick with carrots, potatoes, and dumplings, untouched, its steam curling like a promise. Mia plated it carefully, adding 2 thick slices of buttered cornbread and a steaming mug of black coffee, its aroma sharp and grounding. She carried the tray back, setting it down with a gentle clink, the warmth rising from the plate like a small act of rebellion. "It's still warm," she said, her smile soft but resolute. He stared, eyes wide with disbelief, his hands trembling as they hovered over the tray. "I can't pay," he whispered, voice cracking not from weakness but from the weight of asking. "It's covered," Mia replied, her tone unwavering. "Coffee's on me." As he ate, slow and deliberate, savoring each bite like it was his first solid meal in days, he spoke in fragments, his voice rough but warm. "Reminds me of my wife. She always said warmth was for everyone, especially those who've seen too much cold." His eyes softened with memory, then darkened with loss. "Name's Sam Ellis. If winter takes me, keep this, so someone knows I was here." He pressed a rusted dog tag into her palm, its chain frayed, the metal etched with Ellis, Samuel J. F. 472. The serial number was half worn, but the weight of it burned in Mia's hand, a silent vow. She closed her fingers around it, her heart tightening. Why did his name feel like a promise she was meant to keep? The moment shattered as the kitchen door slammed open, the sound slicing through the diner's hum like a blade. Hank Grayson, the boss, stormed over, his face flushed as red as the diner's vinyl booths, his eyes narrow with fury. "We don't feed beggars," he roared, snatching the empty plate and smashing it to the floor. Ceramic shards scattered amid stew remnants, the crash echoing like thunder in the sudden silence. Customers froze, forks mid-air, then looked away, stirring sugar packets with exaggerated focus or burying their faces in menus. A couple in the corner whispered, "That's what happens when you meddle." A trucker cleared his throat, eyes on his coffee. Mia stepped between Sam and Hank, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "He's a veteran, Hank. Take it from my tips, the food was going to waste." Hank's finger jabbed like a weapon, inches from her face. "This ain't a damn charity, Mia. You're making me look weak in front of customers." His voice carried, sharp enough to silence the grill's hiss, the rain's patter, the diner's very breath. "I paid for the coffee," Mia said, her hands steady as she clutched the dog tag in her apron pocket. The stew was a return, nobody loses. Hank's palm slammed the counter, a gunshot in the quiet. "You don't decide how I run my place. You're fired, pack your things and get out." Gasps rippled through the room, but no one spoke up. The silence stung worse than Hank's words, a room full of witnesses, and not one voice in her defense. A woman in a booth muttered, "That's what you get for bringing trouble inside." Another shifted uncomfortably, eyes glued to her plate. Mia untied her apron with deliberate calm, folding it neatly as if it were a sacred ritual. She leaned to a wide-eyed coworker, whispering, "Keep Sam's coffee hot, don't charge him." She grabbed her worn coat from the break room, its seams fraying like her resolve, and stepped into the downpour. Rain soaked her canvas sneakers in seconds, her hair plastered to her forehead, the cold biting her skin. Her spine stayed straight, just as Harlan taught, stand firm, even when the world pushes back. She walked through the storm, the dog tag heavy in her pocket, its edges pressing into her palm. Why did kindness cost so much? Why did no one else see Sam's worth? Back in her dim garage room, the tin roof rattled under the storm's assault, each drip through the ceiling a reminder of her fragility. Whiskers curled against her hip, his raspy purr a faint comfort as Mia sat on a sagging mattress, the only furniture besides a wobbly chair and a cracked mirror. She checked her bank app on her phone, its screen spiderwebbed from a drop months ago, $42.12. Rent was due in 9 days. No job, no health insurance, no safety net. The dog tag sat heavy in her hand, its etched letters, Samuel J. Ellis, a silent rebuke to a world that forgot. She traced the worn metal, wondering where he'd served, what he'd lost, why a country he fought for could discard him so easily. Unbeknownst to her, a teenager in the diner, tucked in a corner booth with a milkshake, had filmed the entire scene, Hank's outburst, Mia's quiet stand, Sam's hunched gratitude as he ate. The shaky video slipped into the digital ether, uploaded to X with hashtags like #DinerInjustice and #VeteranNeglect. By midnight, it had spread like wildfire, racking up thousands of views. But the flames didn't lift Mia up, they burned. Comments tore at her, rules are rules, fire her. She's probably been stealing food for weeks. Attention seeker playing the hero. Her phone buzzed with notifications, coworkers unfriended her, one messaged, always acting noble, how's unemployment taste? Mia applied at 3 diners the next day, her resume typed on a library computer, its ink smudged from the rain. One manager slid it back, muttering, can't risk the drama, honey. Another didn't let her finish filling out the application, nodding toward the door with a pitying smile. By dusk, Mia wandered Brookdale's slick streets, her coat heavy with rain, her stomach tight with hunger. She passed a bus shelter, its plastic roof sagging under the storm's weight. There, curled beneath a tattered plastic sheet, was Sam, his paper bag clutched tight, his breath shallow in the cold. Mia knelt, ignoring the wet soaking her knees, and left her last half sandwich, wrapped in newspaper from her pocket. Thank you for trusting me, she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the wind. She slipped away, unaware of a black SUV idling at the corner, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. Would her small act unravel her world, or spark something greater? Dawn broke crisp and clear, the storm's fury washed away, the sky a pale gold as sunlight spilled over Brookdale's tired streets. But a new rumble shattered the quiet, not thunder, but the weight of purpose. Black SUVs rolled into the main street, their engines a low growl, tires crunching gravel as they halted traffic. Shopkeepers pressed noses to glass, a delivery boy froze, his bike wobbling, cars idled, drivers craning necks. A colonel stepped out of the lead vehicle, his army dress blues crisp as a blade, his chest a constellation of medals, silver star, bronze star, purple heart, gleaming like beacons in the rising sun. Soldiers poured from the vehicles, army grunts in fatigues, marines in dress blues, navy sailors in pristine whites, air force pilots in flight jackets. 200 strong, they formed silent ranks outside the Oakwood Diner, stretching down the block like a living monument, their boots aligned, their faces unyielding. In a town where nothing happened, this was everything. What force had summoned this army? Inside, Hank Grayson was stacking napkin holders, his hands shaky from the previous night's fallout, his apron smudged with yesterday's grease. The bell above the door jingled, a sound that pierced the morning's quiet. He dropped a mug, ceramic shards skittering across the linoleum, as the colonel filled the doorway, his presence a storm front of authority. I'm Colonel Ryan Ellis, he said, voice calm but unyielding, each word landing like a gavel. Son of Sam Ellis, the man you shamed yesterday. The diner froze, forks hovered mid-bite, coffee cups stilled, the grills hissed the only sound. Hank's face drained of color, his mouth opening, then closing, no words forming. Customers shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting, but none dared speak. In 2007, Iraq, the colonel continued, his tone steady as a drumbeat, our convoy was ambushed outside Fallujah. My transport burned, shrapnel tore my leg. Sam. My father, carried me 3 miles through enemy fire, his own leg bleeding out from shrapnel. He refused treatment until every man was safe. He reached into his coat, producing a laminated citation, its edges worn but words clear, and a gleaming silver star, its ribbon vibrant against the morning light. This was his. He pawned it years ago to feed a homeless family, because he believed honor meant more than metal. The room thickened with silence, every eye on the colonel, the air heavy with the weight of his words. And the waitress you fired, he said, stepping closer to the counter, his boots echoing on the linoleum. She gave him dignity when you stripped it away. She fed him when this town, this country, turned its back. Murmurs rippled outside, phones captured every word, hashtags blooming in real time, hashtag justice for Mia, hashtag veteran honor. A young corporal entered, holding a black velvet case, the silver star nestled inside, its edges catching the light like a promise. Bring her here, the colonel said, his voice soft but commanding. A local reporter had pounded on Mia's garage door, breathless, a camera crew trailing. They're asking for you, soldiers, the whole street's shut down. You have to come now. Mia pulled on her damp coat, her heart racing, and stepped into the morning mist, her sneakers crunching on wet gravel. As she approached the diner, the sea of soldiers parted like a tide, their uniforms a patchwork of service, green, blue, white, khaki. She froze, her breath catching at the sight, 200 soldiers, their right hands rising as one in a thunderous salute, a wave of respect that shook the air. Mia's knees buckled, tears breaking free as the weight of their honor pressed into her chest. The colonel stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers, steady and kind. My father wanted you to have this, he said, pressing the silver star into her trembling palm, its metal warm from his hand. For reminding him he wasn't invisible. Mia shook her head, voice breaking. It's not mine. The colonel's hand closed over hers. It is now. Could one moment rewrite a life? The diner stood silent, Hank's empire crumbling under the weight of 200 salutes. The fallout was swift and merciless. The Oakwood diner shuttered within days, its neon sign gone dark, its windows papered with a sun-bleached, for lease, notice. Suppliers cancelled contracts, refusing to deliver to a place that shamed a veteran. Staff quit in droves, some leaving notes of solidarity for Mia scrawled on napkins. Veterans groups picketed, their signs reading, honor over profit, and, respect the forgotten, their chants echoing down Brookdale's quiet streets. Hank Grayson vanished from town, his pickup truck gone by week's end, his name a whisper of shame in the gossip of barbershops and gas stations. Mia didn't gloat or chase the spotlight, she rebuilt, quietly, as always, her focus on the next step, not the applause. A veteran-run nonprofit, moved by the viral video now at 2 million views, reached out with an offer, manage a community kitchen in a repurposed warehouse on Brookdale's outskirts. The building, once a graveyard for broken vending machines and rusted car parts, was transformed into a sanctuary of warmth. Its scuffed wooden floors echoed with the clatter of pots, the rhythmic chop of knives, the low hum of conversations weaving new bonds. Volunteers filled the space, grizzled soldiers peeling potatoes beside single mothers, high schoolers ladling soup next to retired nurses, their hands moving in sync like a quiet army of care. Whiskers claimed a sunny windowsill, his one-eyed gaze overseeing the chaos like a war-weary general with a soft heart, his purr a steady rhythm beneath the laughter. Mia traded her apron for a simple navy blazer, but her essence remained, serving, noticing, mending. She pinned a faded photo of Harlan to the kitchen's bare wall, his dog tags dangling beside it, their faint clink a nod to the lessons that guided her. Sam Ellis found stability in a VA housing unit 10 miles away, a clean room with a bed, a window, and a small shelf for his paper bag, which held a single photo of his late wife, her smile preserved in faded color. His son, Ryan, visited weekly, their quiet talk stitching together years of distance torn by war and loss. Young soldiers came too, sitting cross-legged on the floor, listening to Sam's stories, not just of Iraq's battlefields, where he'd carried men through fire, but of quieter wars fought on home soil, hunger, cold, the ache of being unseen. Mia visited when she could, bringing a thermos of coffee or a slice of cornbread wrapped in foil. Their conversations were brief, heavy with understanding, needing no grand words. She kept his dog tag in her pocket, its edges worn smooth, and a silver star in a wooden box beside her bed, next to Harlan's medals, a constellation of quiet courage. One chilly afternoon, as the kitchen wound down, the door creaked open, its hinges groaning under the weight of another day. A boy, no older than 8, shuffled in, his sandy hair peeking from a too-big baseball cap, his sneakers scuffed and untied. He clutched a dollar bill, folded carefully in thirds, and a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper, tied with red twine like a gift. He marched to the counter, his eyes serious, his small frame barely reaching the edge. "I saw you in the video," he said, voice small but steady, cutting through the kitchen's hum. "My grandpa was a soldier in Vietnam. He helped people, even when it was hard. I want to help too." He placed the cookie and dollar on the counter, his hands trembling slightly. Mia knelt, her throat tight, fighting tears that threatened to spill. "Can I use this to help someone?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. The room seemed to hold its breath, volunteers pausing, their ladles hovering over pots. Mia placed a hand over her heart, the same gesture those 200 soldiers had offered, and nodded, her eyes shining. "You already are," she whispered. The boy smiled, small but bright, and scampered out, leaving the kitchen warmer than before. That single act, a dollar, a cookie, a child's faith, echoed forward, a ripple from Mia's quiet stand. It wasn't loud, but it was unstoppable, like dawn creeping across a windowsill. This isn't just Mia's story, it's a mirror to our choices. How often do we pass by the weary, the hungry, the forgotten on a park bench, a street corner, or even our own dinner table? Ever silenced kindness when it whispered in your gut, afraid of the cost? Mia's stand wasn't a march or a speech, it was a plate of stew, a moment of dignity for a man the world had discarded. Yet it shook a town, closed a diner, and built a sanctuary where laughter now blooms. What could your small act spark? Share your story of courage below, yours could ignite the next ripple. If this tale gave you chills, hit like, subscribe to HeroHush Stories, comment your thoughts, and share with someone who believes in hidden heroes. Our next story. Even more powerful, a whisper of courage louder than any storm. Stay tuned.